Great. Well, a number of weeks ago, Dave Mumford, who works for 313 here, was showing a lady called Sarah around the facility. She was going to be working here for a few weeks, and he was showing around and introducing her to various people. And then they went into the cafe, and at that point, they met this lady, Julie Wrightson. So Julie was her usual warm, friendly self, and then at some point in the conversation with Sarah, Julie said to Sarah, you know this is a church, obviously, it's a church work-based here. Do you go to church? Do you believe in God? And Sarah turned round and said, oh no, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God at all. At which point Julie turned around and said, well, that's fantastic. We're going to get along great because we've both got faith in common. And Sarah turned and said, no. No, you don't understand. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. At which point Julie said, well, I've got faith that God is real and exists. And you've got faith that he isn't real and doesn't exist. And if faith is defined as believing what can't be proved, then in some way, shape, or form, everyone on planet Earth is exercising some form of faith, even the atheist. We all have beliefs. Beliefs we live out of, beliefs we make decisions out of, beliefs we sometimes react and respond out of, beliefs that are shaped by our understanding of facts, our experiences, our emotions, sometimes our presumptions. And sometimes those things lead us to similar beliefs, and sometimes they lead us to very different beliefs. Linda, my wife, myself, we have many, many beliefs in common, but there are some areas of belief where we differ. So, for example, Linda believes I don't always listen to what she says. And you know how serious she gets about this? I get set an exam, I get set tests at various points in time. So like she's talking to me and then suddenly she looks at me, maybe I'm doing something, she's talking to me, and then she says, what did I just say? And I think, oh, exam time. And here's the thing. What I find strange is even when I pass the exam with full marks, she fails me. Yeah, so she said, what do you say? And I repeat verbatim, exactly word for word, what she just said. And then she says, no, you still weren't listening. Now, I have a different set of beliefs. I believe that Linda chooses the wrong time to tell me these important things. I believe Linda should know I'm a man. That's a fact. She knows I'm a man, and she must surely know that I'm therefore incapable of multitasking. If Linda has a point in time at which she wants to tell me something important, she needs to look for one of those blank bloke moments. You understand? You know those moments where our wives turn to us and say, what are you thinking? And we say, nothing. That's the point. That's the point at which to get that important thing that needs to be remembered in. So we all have belief systems. Sometimes those beliefs are similar. Sometimes they are different. But generally, we all have reasons for what we believe. Sometimes it's good to stop and reflect on our beliefs, to review the reasons why we're believing what we believe. And really that's the point of this series, is to help you ask the question, what are my reasons for believing what I believe? We're going to look at 10 different subjects, one a month over 10 months. And most of those are going to be to do with human existence, human nature, human behavior, We're going to look at some associated facts and challenges that are associated with each of those subjects. But the idea of each talk is to help you ask yourself some questions, to help you explore your own reasoning and conclusions on each topic. Now, within that, I will, each time I speak, unapologetically unpack my own Christian beliefs and share those with you. The reasons that, for me, faith in God makes sense as an answer. Now, if you don't have faith in God, the idea of this series is not that I'm trying to put my reasoning and belief system on you. That's not what I'm looking to do. But I am going to show you that faith in God is not a mindless, blind leap in the dark that has little to do with facts and sensible reasoning. Yeah. Hopefully, you'll come to appreciate that there are some very substantial facts and some very thought-through reasons behind people believing in God. And even if you don't come to God as a conclusion, I trust that it helps you reflect on your own belief system, where it's based on facts and reason, and where it's based on experience, emotion, and where in your belief system you may actually be in assumption, or in your own faith, believing things that are far less certain than you actually realize. And so this series is a series for atheists, for Sarah and all her friends. It's a series for agnostics, for those who don't know whether God is real or not, for those who are exploring the Christian faith, and it's also for committed Christians. If you're a committed Christian, this Reason to Believe series will help you explore in a deeper way some of the facts and reasons that underpin your faith, and hopefully it will increase your confidence in that faith and also give you the tools to better explain the reasons, even to others, why you believe what you believe. So the title this morning that we're going to start off with is The Art and the Artist. Now I'm going to start by showing you 6 pieces of art, and here they are. There it is, the Angel of the North, up in Gateshead, steel sculpture, 20 metres by 54 metres. Let's go back. Here's an oil painting of the Derbyshire Hills in the late 1800s. Here's a charcoal picture of an angel carrying a message. On it, it says, "Wake up, sleeper." Here's a picture entitled House on the Sand, a digital painting with an iPad Pro, basically a reflection of the parable Jesus told in Matthew 7 of the person that built their house on the sand as opposed to the rock. And then there's a bronze sculpture called The Thinker, which has resided in Paris since 1904. And finally, there's a portrait of a horse called Darcy, and that landscape you see there is of the island of Skye. So, if I suggested to you that each piece of art that I've showed you appeared spontaneously, out of nothing, without reason, you would say to me, I'm off my head. You would say to me, I had lost, if this is a series about reason to believe, you've lost all reason if you're suggesting that. With each piece of art, you'd have good reason to believe that there was a creative, highly skilled artist behind each piece. And you'd be absolutely right. Behind each piece of art, there's always 3 things. There's a who, there's a how, and there's a why. So, Angel of the North, Anthony Gormley, in 1998, he wanted the angel to be a focus for people's hopes and fears. If you're in hope, the angels help that hope. If you're in fear, they will protect you. There's something behind Anthony Gormley's piece. Secondly, this is a guy called George Turner behind this, who was pleased to have left hundreds and hundreds of paintings like this of the English countryside, a legacy before the motor car and urbanisation started to destroy the countryside. That was his reasoning. And then this one is our very own Claire Harrison. Actually, that picture's over there on the wall. Claire got a prophetic word from God for this church that God was going to start doing some amazing things, and we needed to wake up and be alert, come out of lukewarmness and half-heartedness, because God was on the move. And then this piece of art is our very own Stephen Sharples, who actually sketched this during the worship one Sunday morning. And then Simon, that very same morning, preached, and he preached with reference to that very same parable. And then finally, that's Rodin, who was a French sculptor, the thinker, wanted to represent and remind us of intellect and poetry. And then finally, some of you may remember this young man, John Hesford, who actually was commissioned to do the picture of the horse, Darcy, and who actually absolutely loves the island of Skye and just set himself a challenge of trying to capture its majesty and its magnificence. So, not only do those 6 pieces of art have an artist behind them, actually, every piece of art in the world has a creative, skillful artist behind it, with 1 or 2 exceptions. But let the general concept stand. And with every piece of art, it's good reasoning to ask the questions: who did that art? How was it done? And why was it done? Now, the rest of the talk, we're going to look at 3 very different pieces of art, things that I consider art. You might decide they are not art, which is okay, but to me, they are art. Incredible pieces of art. 3 pieces of art that I've always in my life been absolutely sort of wowed by, amazed and overwhelmed by. And these 3 pieces of art have always led me to ask the question: who, how, and why? So the first piece of art that has really impressed me over my 59 years of living on planet Earth is life itself, in particular, human life. So, you can't start with any pictures without starting here, can you? Because this is where life begins. Don't begin when the child comes out. This is where life begins. Yeah, I knew we'd have some oohs and ahs and all that sort of thing. Yeah. I couldn't help but get my own granddaughter in. I thought I'd do that. And a couple of my own grandsons. Sorry. Clement and Solomon. He was recognized. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you, just share with you some facts about human life and the human body. You may be tempted to not believe these facts. I want to tell you, I have checked and double-checked. I've done all sorts of mathematical calculations myself. These facts, as far as I can possibly check, are absolutely true. Let's look at the amazing human body. Your heart beats 100,000 times per day, 3 million litres per year. Your body's comprised of 65% oxygen, 18% carbon, 10% hydrogen, 3% nitrogen, 1.5% calcium, 1% phosphorus, but mostly your water. Your eyes can distinguish between 2.5 million different colours. Your nose can differentiate between approximately 1 trillion different smells. Your brain contains approximately 100 billion neurons. Maybe a few less for us, those that are of a certain sort of age. I think I'm probably down to my last 100. Information passes around your brain at speeds of up to 250 miles an hour. Your body's comprised of approximately 37 trillion cells, that's 37 with 12 noughts, and approximately 7 octillion atoms, which is 7 with 27 noughts. The total number of blood vessels in your body, if you include veins, arteries, and all capillaries, if you put them length to length, extends 60,000 miles. That's 2.5 times round the world. And what about this one to finish? If you uncoiled all the DNA in your body and you put it all together, it would have a total length of approximately 10 billion miles. You would get to the planet Pluto and back on your DNA. I've checked that, double-checked that. I even did the calculations, finding out how much cell there was, how much DNA uncoiled in each cell, times it by 23 trillion, etc. It all comes together. Incredible, amazing facts about yourself. Look at the person next to you. Tell the person next to you, you are incredible, you are amazing. Okay, you're obviously saying a lot more than that. Come on, let's move on to the second piece of art. The second piece of art I want to suggest to you this morning is the world that we live in. Of course, there are plenty of places where mankind has exploited and spoilt the world, but the natural beauty of this planet is absolutely awe-inspiring. Linda and I have traveled many places, done a lot of walking. Every journey we've ever gone on has taken me twice as long as it should, because Linda is obsessed with capturing on photo every beautiful scene we ever walk past and through. She's also got a thing about trees. Incredibly ugly trees, some of them that I'm concerned, but she doesn't seem to think so. Anyway, let's have a look at some slides related with, some of these photos, by the way, are our photos, some are not. I was doing a bit of paragliding. I want to go on holiday there. You've got to agree, it's a pretty amazing place we live in. Let me talk to you about some perfect conditions for life on the earth. We have the perfect sun, particularly stable, long-lasting, and metal-rich. It's the perfect size for us. We are the perfect distance from the sun. Too close, and the water on our planet would boil. Too far, and the water on our planet would freeze. We have the perfect magnetic field. It's unusually strong, which ensures the atmosphere is kept in place. We have the perfect size moon. It's bigger than you'd expect, ensuring the Earth doesn't wobble on its axis, causing more extreme seasons and weather conditions. We have the perfect solar system. Jupiter and planets seem to have protected the Earth from massive asteroids hitting it. And we are in the perfect galaxy, the Milky Way. Exactly the right type of galaxy, an elliptical galaxy. We're in exactly the right position, the Orion Arm, which is the low-density outskirts, otherwise known as the boring suburbs of the Milky Way. It's good to be in the boring suburbs because we're perfectly positioned when we're out of the main events to avoid gamma-ray bursts from explosive events, gravitational fields, and supernova, which do nothing for your sunburn and your increased incidence of skin cancer. So it's good we're in the Orion Arm. The third piece of art that I want to talk to you about is the heavens, the cosmos, the universe. Let me show you some slides. And let me talk to you about some facts about the vastness of the universe. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. It will go around the world 7.5 times in 1 second. 1, 2. Light has gone round 7.5 times around the world. So pretty fast. Okay, so we will use that measurement to give us a bit of an idea of the size of the universe. Our galaxy is the Milky Way. It contains 100 billion stars, of which our sun is only one of them. It takes approximately 100,000 light years to travel across the galaxy. In other words, if you were traveling at 186,000 miles per second, you would have to keep going for 100,000 years just to get from one side of our galaxy to the other. There's approximately 100 billion other galaxies, other than the Milky Way, in the observable universe, and the observable universe would take you at a speed of 186,000 miles per second. You would have to travel for 93 billion years to get from one side of the universe to the next. And wow, that's us. And that's us. Not that blue circle. That's us. There's a little dot in the middle of that blue circle. In 1997, the Voyager probe was launched from this planet, and it's been traveling from 1997 ever since. On the 6th of June, 1990, it looked back and it took a picture of our planet from nearly 4 billion miles away. And that's us in the universe. And you and I are just a little speck on that little speck. So I'm just giving you a little picture of, in some ways, how insignificant we can be in the grand scheme of things. Here's a couple of other photos. A lot of these are from the Hubble telescope that's looked further and further into different galaxies and nebulas and things like that. Many of you have seen these sorts of photos. Okay. So, the questions of how, who, and why, how the life, the world, the universe came into being, who, if anyone, brought it into being, why, if for any reason it is and we are here, have constantly been questions that have fueled a passion in man to explore and discover and understand more and more of the answers to those questions. And the answers to those questions have constantly shaped people's reasoning and belief systems. Now, we have to understand there are a huge number of challenging questions that these three pieces of art pose. For example, is it really possible that the fantastically complex characteristics of encoded language of DNA, which is the information storage mechanism for all living things, has it really arisen via a completely unguided random process? Or, even given enough time, could life really have evolved undirected from scratch, from diddly squat? It's a scientific term that I read about recently. Could life have evolved completely undirected from scratch up to the amazing level of complexity and sophistication we now see and experience? Now, I'm not answering those questions. I'm simply saying that these are the sort of questions being asked, and these are the sort of questions being debated. Of course, for some people, the only relevant question is the question of how. The who and the why are just not questions. So for many atheists, there is no who, and there is no why, there's only how. How did it happen? How did it come into being? But we have to understand that the how, without the who and the why, can sometimes leave some significant gaps. Gaps that can require considerable amounts of faith to be exercised even by the atheist. People can sometimes believe that advancements in science always answers questions, closes gaps, and points away from God. Actually, sometimes science ends up posing more questions than it answers, and it can point us towards God rather than away from God. So let me unpack this a little more with you by talking a bit about the understanding science has regarding the origins of the universe, the planet, and life itself. Now, you've got to bear with me for about 5 to 7 minutes, okay? I'll do it as simply as I can. The last thing I want any of you to feel is that you're back in the classroom. But we have to just explore a few things in order for us to understand there's some very sensible reasoning behind the Christian faith. I did test all this out on my wife, who didn't do any science at O-level or GCSE or anything. And she said she understood it. So that's good. Okay, so the first half of the last century, the scientific understanding of the universe was basically what they call a steady state model. In other words, the universe is vast, it's infinite, but it's always been there. There was no need for how it got there, because science said it's just always been there. But by the mid-1960s, the universe is expanding. Now, you've got the Big Bang Theory. If you run the clock back, the universe at some point the whole universe would be completely contained in a room this size, the whole universe. And if you run the clock further back still, it would be contained in something the size of a basketball. And if you go back a little bit further still, the size of a tennis ball. And if you go back even further, the size of a grape, ultimately into a small, dense, infinite hot point that scientists like Stephen Hawking refer to as the initial singularity. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Good. So now, with the progress of science after the 1960s, understanding the universe is expanding, we discover the universe hasn't always just been there. Yeah. Guess what? It had a beginning. Yeah. So scientific progress doesn't leave you with less questions, it gives you more questions, more how questions. How did it begin? What lit the blue touch paper to get it going? How did the initial singularity come out of nothing? What was there before the universe began? Lots of questions, huge questions, and lots of theories, but no clear answers. Nothing provable. You have to understand that. When people blindly turn around to you and say, oh, scientists have got it all sorted out, it's a Big Bang Theory. That is an ignorance. It's not an understanding of the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory is a bit like a train at the top of the hill, and the Big Bang Theory tells you how it got to the bottom of the hill. But it doesn't tell you how the train got there in the first place. More how questions were opened in the latter half of the last century, when scientific progress began to reveal that when the universe began, the fundamental forces it was birthed with seemed to be fine-tuned for life. Some 30 or so fundamental numbers and values in the universe seem to be fine-tuned. Values such as the force of gravity in the universe, the ratio of electrons to protons, mass, and a whole heap of other values. So many values, so exquisitely balanced that the tiniest fluctuation in any one of them would mean a universe capable of sustaining life simply would not exist. So did we just get lucky? Did we get lucky that those 30 values of the universe all came out just right? Well, if you want to look at the probability of that happening, let me give you a couple of examples of how lucky we would have needed to get. If you can imagine having a huge tub of bricks, children's bricks, small bricks, and you randomly throw them on the floor, how many times would you need to throw those bricks out onto the floor until what appeared out of you throwing them was a perfect replica in model form of the Eiffel Tower? How many years would you be throwing? It just gives you an idea of the probabilities. Here's another idea. Give you a little bit of an insight into the probabilities in terms of fine-tuning. Take a dice. If you were to roll it 80 times actually, what's the chance of rolling a dice and getting 80 sixes in a row consecutively? How many times would you have to be throwing the dice to get that? If I took a dice and I threw it and I got 86s in a row and 100 quid for every time it came on a 6, would you look at me and say, whoa, you were lucky this morning? Or would you say to me, it's loaded, the dice are loaded? Well, actually, that's what the question we have to ask. Did we just get lucky, or was it in some way, shape, or form loaded in some way? Scientists have a number of theories how the universe ended up being so finely tuned. They have the multiverse theory as one theory. Some people think it's a rubbish theory, other very reputable people think it's a good theory. And you know what that theory is? The multiverse theory of how we got so lucky, it's that there's actually billions upon billions of other universes. Oh, but by the way, we can't see them, and we can't prove them, but we have faith that they might be there. There are other theories besides, and I'm not dismissing those theories. Those theories are by very bright men and women, but they are all theories, they are all contested, and none can be proved, seen, or observed. And you have to understand that. So whether we're talking about the origin of the universe or its incredible fine-tuning, if faith is belief in what can't be seen or proved, science and atheism is still having to exercise considerable amounts of faith when it comes to how these three pieces of art, the universe and planet and life, actually came into being. So, what about my own journey of reason? That's the science bit done, by the way. Tell me if you understood it reasonably. Stick your hand up. Just, okay, that's great. 8 of you understood it. I'm really encouraged and feeling inspired at this point. So what about my own journey of reason? How have I got to where I am with my beliefs? Well, my educational background is primarily scientific, including 5 years of medical science at Manchester University. So I'm familiar with science. I actually find science fascinating and enjoyable. But how about this? Science, for me, has never pointed me away from believing God. Quite the reverse. It's always pointed me towards believing in God, even before I was a Christian. So my first year at medical school in Manchester University, 1979, was a year of studying in incredible detail the human body, from things like, the eye, the brain, right down to sort of cellular level and how these cells were working on a sort of, a microscopic level. And I spent first year studying these things. And the more I studied, the more I was absolutely, I can't believe how amazing our bodies are. And in fact, remember, I'm not a Christian at this point. For me, it was a bit like taking the back of a watch off and understanding all the workings that were going on and thinking to myself, God, this is amazing. There must be a watchmaker behind this. I can't believe this just fell into place as a random set of events. So, and then the other thing, again, I'm not still a Christian, but I'm sort of, I'm asking questions about life. Has this really just all come out of nothing? Is this really a random accident chance? Before I'm Christian, those are the things. That's what science did to me. It pointed me to those sorts of questions. And then the other thing that challenged me when I was in medical school was that everything we are is summed up chemically. In other words, you are just oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and you are 65% water. And I wasn't convinced. I felt there was more to us than just chemicals being held together. So the concept of a spirit and a soul was not difficult for me to envisage even before I was a Christian. The more I studied and learned, the more it pointed me towards God. And when I held my own children, and any of you that have held your own children when they're born will have the same. When I was even, oh my goodness, I'm even more convinced that life is a miraculous gift, not a lucky accident. I've always understood that even science at some point has to exercise some degree of faith. There are far too many unanswered questions. Now, when it came to where I was personally prepared to exercise faith, well, for me, believing life evolved from scratch, completely undirected and unguided, was and is simply too big a leap for me. Nor do I have the faith to believe the sum total of all we are is summed up chemically. I'm comfortable that the universe had a beginning, absolutely, and came into being in a moment with an explosive event, but I don't have faith to believe in an initial singularity that spontaneously exploded and appeared originally from nothing. I don't have the faith for that. Nor do I have the faith that the fine-tuning of the universe was just a stroke of good luck. Nor do I have the faith for an infinite number of universes that can't be seen or observed, nor, in fact, for any of the debatable contested theories that likely will never be able to be tested and proved. The sum total of faith to believe all those things is just far too much for me to bridge. It's like asking me to believe these three phenomenal pieces of art just are. Well, I can no more have the faith for that than I could have faith to believe those 6 pieces of art that I showed you at the beginning have no artist behind them. So where and what is my faith? Well, it will be summed up in these 3 verses. Psalm 19, verse 1 to 4. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the ends of the world. That's my faith. Here's my faith. Romans 1, 19 to 20. What may be known about God is plain to people, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. And then finally, Psalm 139, verse 13 and 14. For you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Here's my faith. It's a universe that constantly proclaims and declares without words, day after day after day, God. God as the beginning. God as the cause. God himself as the initiator of the Big Bang. It's a universe that through its sheer size and awesomeness is continually declaring and proclaiming the awesomeness, creativity, workmanship, power, majesty, and glory of the God who brought it all into being. Here's my faith. It's a world that through its creative beauty continually reflects and makes plain to us all God's invisible qualities, God's eternal power, and his divine nature. A massive signpost is the world we live in and the beauty that we live in. A massive signpost, like the signpost of the universe, continually pointing to the existence of God and making plain to everyone that God is very much alive. Overwhelming proof to everyone who demands evidence, so no one has an excuse that God's not shown himself to people, all people. Here's my faith. It's that neither you nor I were a random accident, nor are we simply a collection of glued together chemicals. We are created beings with a soul and a spirit, who were carefully and lovingly knit together in our mother's womb. Fearfully and wonderfully made by the same loving God who brought the universe and world into being. Here's my faith, that whether we were wanted by our parents, valued by our parents, or valued by anyone around us. We are profoundly and deeply loved and counted wonderful by the one who lovingly brought each one of us into being. Here's my faith. The art has an artist behind it. There are two types of art exhibition. There's the art exhibition you go into and simply walk around and admire the art. Then there's another type of art exhibition. That's where the artist himself hosts the exhibition. And in the second type of exhibition allows you to not only enjoy the art, but allows you to relationally engage with the artist, to talk with the artist, to engage with the who, and to ask him why. And that makes that type of exhibition a completely new level of exhibition, an enriched experience. One of the greatest joys for me in life has been enjoying the artist alongside the art. I mean, I love the beauty of this world and the things that we can see, and Linda spends ages taking photographs of. And every time I look at it, I give thanks to God for what he's done. Every time I look at it, it says something about his character and his creativity and his power. And every time I'm wowed by what I look at, I'm wowed afresh by God. Whether it's looking at this world or looking out through the Hubble telescope, whatever it is, it always has the same effect on me. And the greatest joy has been actually, I don't just enjoy the art, I can enjoy the artist. I can walk and talk with him in the midst of the exhibition of life that he has given me as a gift to enjoy and walk through. And when I've had my own kids and my own grandkids and I hold them, and I look at them and think, yeah, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And it just points me again back to the artist, and I engage with the artist and I say, thank you, Father. What a loving, incredible, creative, powerful, amazing Father you are, that you should create this life and you should entrust this life for a season to my care. And getting to know the who and discovering the why has been part of the great adventure of life for me. And I thank God that I've enjoyed the exhibition of this life, being able to ask why and how and in what way. And what does this mean for us and for me and for you? We all have to decide why we believe what we believe and where and at what point we're going to exercise faith. People are often under the illusion that atheism, deciding that there's no God, is all reason and no faith, and that Christianity is all faith and no reason. Well, I hope you've understood today that neither of those statements are accurate. The choice not to believe in an artist and the choice to believe in the artist have this in common. They both involve reason and faith. We're going to sing a song at this point in time, and this song, the team are going to come back up. We're going to sing a song really which is an acknowledgement that God's created us, he's put breath in our lungs, and so we're going to praise him with the life and the breath that he's given us. After we finish this song, we're going to have a short interview for 5 minutes. I'm going to introduce you to someone on this subject, and I'm going to interview him about this particular subject before we then bring the meeting to a close. Okay? Okay. Just take your chest. Yeah, that's it. Okay, great. Well, it's a pleasure for me to introduce to you today my good friend Patrick Bridden and his wife Denise. We have known each other probably 20 years, maybe more than that. So it's great to have you. Thanks. He's travelled down from Gateshead So we do appreciate you doing that. So, Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, well, thank you, Martin. It's really been good to be with you this morning. Yes, so my name is Patrick Bridden. So some of you may know me as the leader of one of the Taking Ground churches in Gateshead in Berkeley. But also, actually, Monday to Friday, I work in the University of Newcastle, actually, and my formal title is the Professor of Theoretical Physics. Try not to let that out too much, normally on a weekend, but there we are. So I split my time between, on the one hand, running and serving God in my church, but also, of course, doing research and teaching in the University of Newcastle.
Okay. So a pretty bright guy then. So what grade did you get at O-level physics? I just want to check whether it was higher than mine.
Well, they hadn't invented A-stars in those days, you know. They were a later invention.
Yeah, very good. Well, great. So you lead a church, and also you're professor of physics at Newcastle University. So let me ask you a question. Presumably, if you're leading a church, you're a Christian.
Yes.
That helps. So can you tell us a little bit about how you became a Christian?
Yes, of course, yes. So I've been a Christian for just over 30 years, in fact. I became a Christian. Actually, it wasn't a terribly scientific reason that I became a Christian. It really happened in the final year of my study. I was in the last year of my undergraduate degree. And it was, my life was really in two parts. There was an external part where I was succeeding. I was doing really well in my studies. I obviously got a career that would be opening out ahead of me. But I think, as the case with many young people at that type of stage in life, there are also questions and difficulties and things I was struggling with inside. And what I found is, no matter how good it seemed that I was at theoretical physics, I was really unable to answer some of the problems that just arise in life. And I became really gradually a slightly sadder individual as those 3 years went on. But the day arrived, actually, when I had a very close friend who was sitting next to me on one day in a lecture theatre, and I just said to him, well, there's this mission that's taking place in the university. Do you want to go to one of these mission meetings? And I went to one of those mission meetings, and I just felt at that time that God was, in a relationship with God was the one thing that was just missing and was truly the answer to many of the inconsistencies that I had inside. Of course, I didn't realize that the friend next to me just happened to be one of the organizers of the university mission that week, and he actually had been praying for me for 3 years. Wow. So God works in amazing ways, actually. And as time goes on, you just see more and more of God's goodness.
Yeah. Excellent. So obviously, being a professor of physics, you know a little bit about science. Can I ask you this question? Do you find that science undermines your faith or reinforces it?
No, well, I feel that the more you actually see of the universe, the more powerfully that really speaks of God. We've seen the verse, haven't we? The heavens declare the glories of God, and I think probably every man or woman who's ever looked up to the stars in space has just been awestruck by the beauty and the majesty of that. But one thing I've learned as you study more and more, you just see more and more beauty. And there is more and more depth to the universe that you see. And that really just speaks to me about a God who is extravagant, flowers don't need to be beautiful, and the heavens don't need to be beautiful, but there is a beauty which just shows the extravagance of God. And I think there is a coherence to everything that you see as well. And again, as you study, especially physics, you see an underpinning coherence to many of the different things that you experience in life. The story of physics really has been seeing how things that were once thought to be very different actually are intricately connected together. And again, that just speaks about the coherence of God and the coherence of the world that we live in. In my own personal life, the coherence of the outside and the coherence of the inside. God is a coherent God.
Yeah. So for you, there's a sense in which everything fits in an amazing way together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this, a bit of a pointed question. Do you think it's ridiculous that people believe God is the creator of the universe, our world, and life itself?
Well, you might be surprised to know that I don't think
Give me
that's
an answer
ridiculous
I
at all.
wasn't expecting.
So I think obviously I think it's been very interesting to listen to Martin's talk today, and I think that really does bring home to us that we often hear, don't we, that this is a discussion between faith on the one hand and reason on the other, but it's actually nothing really like that at all. We just have two very different pictures of the world that we live in. We have one picture of the world is a world that was created by God in this beautiful and coherent way, and the other way is a material world which doesn't have this God. And those are just two different pictures, and trying to reason which one of those is more reasonable than the other, I think does not actually. It's very hard to argue one actually. As a scientist, to say that one actually is more reasonable than the other from a scientific point of view. And I think, as Martin said, that the creation, the creation of the world having a beginning in the Big Bang, and again, I think there's a point of convergence between the two things there. But I think some of the most difficult things that we try to explain in science, is this idea, as Martin nicely mentioned earlier, how it's possible to have a universe that is so beautifully fine-tuned for life. And the reasons that try to be developed to explain this are just so difficult, and so difficult to test, and so difficult to grasp. And I would actually say, as a scientist, that I think that the belief in a God who creates this beautiful and coherent world is actually a more satisfying explanation than some of the current theories that are being put together. But even if we do have millions of universes, I'm sure there's Christians working in that area of science, and there are Christians who are working in that, would actually say, well, God obviously created all of them anyway. I mean, there is, I think that there isn't an argument actually that is put by science that actually in any way disproves that belief in God.
Yeah.
And I think that there is nothing which is more coherent than having a God who created the world around us as a wonderful and magnificent act. And if we accept that, then lots of other questions of life get answered in the same breath as well.
Right. Fantastic. Okay, well, the reason I invited Patrick down was because I only got a B in my O-level physics, actually, and a B in my A-level physics. So I thought, if you didn't believe me that it was reasonable to believe in God, in the context of science, you would at least believe a professor of physics. So if you want to argue about anything I've said this morning, Patrick will be here and leave his name and address and his email address for you. Let's give him a big round of applause. Okay, so the question on the advertising for the Reason to Believe series was, can faith in God be a firm foundation that makes sense when nothing else does? Well, clearly you've heard from me this morning and from Patrick a resounding yes. For me, it makes great sense of the how, the who, and the why questions that relate to our existence. But the more important question this morning is not what makes sense to me, it's what makes sense to you. And I trust this morning that this has provoked you in your thinking, and I trust the other 9 talks we're going to do will do exactly the same. Let's just go back into worship and we'll finish our meeting in the next 5